who have given our community already so much care and love. And a special shout out to the chair of our Chevra Kadisha, Debbie Makamal. I know you're watching from home, so. I am delighted to introduce tonight's speaker, Rabbi Stuart Kelman. Rabbi Kelman is the founding rabbi and rabbi emeritus of Congregation Netivot Shalom in Berkeley, which began back in 1988 as a community minyan and has grown into a large and vibrant conservative synagogue that is known for its religious services, preschool, and adult programming. Netivot Shalom has taken leadership positions on the issues of LGBTQ+ and non-Jews as participants in conservative congregations. I was fortunate to be one of their Hebrew teachers and junior congregation leaders in the early 90s and know firsthand what a warm and vibrant community it is. During retirement, Rabbi Kelman has been involved in the work of the Chevra Kadisha movement. He was the president of Kavod V'Nichum, the national organization of the Chevra Kadisha, and served as dean of the Gamliel Institute, which is a 3-year online certification program for training of Chevra Kadisha leaders. He's also one of the founders of Gan Yarok, the first green and Jewish cemetery in North America, and is the recipient of the 2012 Leadership Award from the Green Burial Council. He continues to teach and speak about liturgy, Chevra Kadisha, green cemeteries, Safrut, which is Hebrew calligraphy, and Jewish education, and he also likes to play jazz with local bands. Rabbi Kelman's wife, Vicky, is an internationally recognized professional Jewish family educator and recipient of the prestigious Covenant Award. They have 4 children and 10 grandchildren. On a personal note, I've known the Kelmans since I was a kid, attending LA Hebrew High and Camp Ramon Ojai. Their oldest daughter, Nava, and I danced in a Jewish performing arts company and studied abroad in Israel together. Ari, their next oldest, and I attended UC Santa Cruz together, and we used to carpool over the hill to teach Hebrew and Judaica at Shir Hadash in Los Gatos. And I was also one of their twins, Ilana's counselor, when she was in Adat Shalom at Ramah. Vicky and Stu have been teachers and role models of mine since I was a kid, and I am really looking forward to learning from Rabbi Kelman tonight. So without further ado, I give to you Rabbi Stuart Kelman. See, you should see him about now. There you are. Let's see if we could hear you. Hold on, we don't hear you yet. But I do see. All right, let's wait. Try again.
Okay.
There we
How
are.
about that? There we are. Good. Thank you. Thank you. What a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. And you have now brought back a whole bunch of wonderful, wonderful memories, which both at Netivot Shalom and with my own family. So thank you. And thanks for this invitation to speak about Chevra Kadisha. But I want to start someplace else. I would like to start with talking about the holiday that comes on Sunday all day. I'm not sure how many have heard of this holiday. It's a rather interesting one. It's called Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach, the second Passover. Pesach Rishon, the first one, were for those who could celebrate and were fit to do so. But there were a whole bunch of people who were unable to celebrate Passover at its proper date, and the rabbis instituted this holiday called Pesach Sheni 1 full month after Pesach Rishon, after the first one, to give those people who couldn't observe the first Pesach properly, they gave them a second chance. What a wonderful message. This wasn't because you were sort of, I suppose, tired from cleaning the week before, but you could have found yourself, for example, on a boat. Or generally, you might have been a Kohen, a priest. And on Pesach, the first one, you found yourself in a state of impurity. I'll just use that word. But a month later, you could actually be ready and in a proper condition to observe Pesach. So I want you all to remember the Seder, because in that Seder, there is a rabbi who is my hero. I have a hero, and I have a feeling that many of you know him as well. Think about Pesach, just a month ago. There's a part of the Haggadah that says that there are three things that one has to mention at a Seder: Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. And do you remember who said it? That's right. It was Rabban Gamliel. Actually, in the Talmud, there are a few Rabban Gamliels. This is Rabban Gamliel Hazaken, the elder who lived in the first century of the Common Era. And it seems that in his time, when people died, if they were poor, they were carried to a cemetery on a plain wooden plank. If they were rich, they were carried out on a very fancy engraved board. If they were poor, they were dressed in tattered clothes. And if they were rich, they were dressed in the finest of garments. Things got so bad that very often the poor were simply left in the street since they could not afford to be buried properly. Enter Rabban Gamliel, who, when he saw what was happening, ordered that every Jew, no matter their station in life, be buried in tachrichin, in simple, plain white shrouds, and in a casket made of the plainest of wood and without any metal. And that actually became known as the plain pine box. So here's one individual, one person, who was actually able to transform an entire ritual of practice by making sure that Judaism lived by the principle of equality in death, rich and poor alike. And he himself instructed his students to bury him in tachrichin, in these white garments, and a wooden casket. That's why he's my hero. And that's why, as you heard, that's why we named our institute after him, the Gamliel Institute. And even now, in the 21st century, that tradition of burial in shrouds in a plain pine box endures. But there have been two additional ritual practices that have been added: Shmirah and Tahara. And those are the two concepts that I'd like to explore with you, as well as those individuals, the members of the Chevra Kadisha, that I want to talk about this evening, and put these concepts into a context that I think is very appropriate for us today, and certainly for Beth Am. And so, Shmirah, watching and guarding, and Tahara. For the moment, I'm going to leave that word untranslated, which will take us also back to Pesach Sheni. But let's start with two fundamental value statements. One, no one should ever be alone at death. And two, everyone should be accompanied by the community to their final resting place. Well, in the early days, Shmirah consisted of sitting and watching and guarding the body from animals or grave robbers. Today, that's not our concern. But we have an opportunity to practice Shmirah with a different mindset, still with the underlying value of someone always being with the body, either in person, at a funeral home, for example, or by Zoom, or by a hybrid of those two. And one clear advantage of Zoom is the ability for anyone, anywhere, to participate in Shmirah, anywhere in the world. People who could not say goodbye to that person in person can now do so virtually. And Shmirah, I would translate as the opportunity for anyone to actually be with the neshama. Which brings me to the neshama, to the soul, and the obligation to assist the soul, the neshama, the soul and the body, to make the transition between this world and the next, whatever that may be. and a group of individuals who together are called a Chevra Kadisha, a group of people who are engaged in a holy act, are the ones who gather to help the neshama transition by performing a tahara, an act of purification. That's a bad word, so I'd like to try and explain it a little bit better. We all live in this real world of everyday existence, and sometimes we're able to rise above this world and actually be in a heightened state of awareness. We go from what has traditionally been called tameh, again, inaccurately translated as impure, but really means that's how we live, to a state of tahor, again, inaccurately translated as pure, but a different state of being. And remember those who weren't fit to observe Pesach the first time around? Well, probably they were Kohanim, who were tameh, who were living in the world. And now, over the month, had a chance to become tahor, to become fit to offer sacrifices and do a seder. And in order to do so, they had to do some ritual that would enable them to become tahor. Well, something parallel like that happens in a tahara room, in the room in which the ritual of tahara is performed, usually in a funeral home. And the members of the Chevra Kadisha assist that neshama in going from one world to the next, and from one state of being tameh to the state of tahor, because one should exit this world fit to enter the next. And we do this by cleaning the person, pouring a certain amount of water on the body, dressing, placing him or her in the casket, ready for burial. Water is used not only in Judaism, but in many cultures as a vehicle for transition. Think about mikvah for a convert or baptism for a young child. By pouring water on the body, we are certifying that this body has achieved a state of tahor, an elevated state. In this week's Parsha, besides the light, this Parsha, Emor, begins with a description of the Kohanim, the priests, and the regulations making it possible that they are, much of the time, in a state of tahor. When we engage in this process, we're helping that soul, that neshama, to rise above the usual and be ready to alight to a higher plane. Lest you think that the person lying before you is merely the body of a deceased person. Most people with whom I've spoken after they've done a tahara tell me that you can actually feel the presence of the neshama in that room. The neshama, the soul, is present. And we who do a tahara actually start by addressing that person by name. We say, so-and-so, please forgive us if we do something to you inadvertently that is displeasing or a mistake. And why would we address the deceased if we didn't actually believe that there was a neshama, a soul lying in front of us? What a remarkable statement to make, because it transforms a mere set of mechanical actions into a remarkable spiritual experience. And the fact that the emphasis now is on the spiritual ritual as along with the mechanical is what is new today in these days in North America. And it is becoming part of the ritual practices. A Chevra Kadisha is becoming part of the practice in many, many congregations throughout North America, regardless of denomination. Reform, conservative, renewal, Orthodox. This is not the provenance of the Orthodox, but it is now becoming accessible to every congregation and to every person. And remember, this act of tahara that we are doing is something for which we can never be repaid. Let me repeat that. The act of tahara that we are doing is an act for which we can never be repaid. I want to suggest that anyone who wishes to do so can join with others in the acts of Shmirah and Tahara. And the same way that we as a community welcome a newborn or share in a bar or bat mitzvah that we just did, or join with a celebration of a birthday as we just did. We join as a community as well to help a neshama at the end of life along the journey. Beth Am is already a part of this renewed national movement, but every so often we need to be reminded of this ritual of transformation, to study it, to learn, for us as individuals and for us as a synagogue. So even if you choose to do one of these mitzvot, Shmirah or Tahara, or even if you choose not to participate, please continue to learn more. In June, the organization that I'm part of, Kavod V'Nichum, is holding a conference all online where you can enrich the knowledge that you already possess and translate these mitzvot for you at Beth Am to use in this 21st century. Your congregation is part of this renewed national movement. The actual number of chevras in North America has at least doubled in the last 10 to 20 years. We have and continue to face many challenges in this COVID era. But history has shown the resiliency of Jewish communities around the world who, when faced with a disastrous plague, succeeded to preserve the values of our traditions at the end of life in very creative ways. My wish is that you, here at Beth Am, continue this unbroken chain and enhance it. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Kelman. After the service, Rabbi Kelman is going to stay on this Zoom link. If you're here in person, you can join me in the conference room. We're going to be set up with the Zoom link will be on. If you're interested, no, this is if you're kind of interested. If we've piqued your interest in joining our chevra and you want to learn more or ask Rabbi Kelman some questions, that will take place then. And our people online, of course, same for you. We'll have you log on to the Zoom link. And I know the members of our Chevra Kadisha are going to participate in that. And so thank you so much again, and Shabbat Shalom. It was wonderful to hear from you.
I just want to echo the thanks to Rabbi Kelman. Thank you, Cantor Spall, for making this beautiful connection and providing this really profound learning. I know for many years I got to facilitate our Intro to Judaism classes field trip up to Hills of Eternity to learn about the rituals and the rites of Jewish death and burial. And it was always a profound class for those participants. So glad all of you, both here and online, got to hear more about this really beautiful Jewish tradition. We'll continue with a prayer of hope and